I'm Rachel Thomas, 31 years old, and the night my sister stood up at Thanksgiving dinner and told everyone they had voted me out of the family, that was the moment something in me stopped trying to belong. I had spent years carrying the weight of our home, the business and my father's care, while Amanda built a life in Manhattan she liked to post about. I came to that dinner with a folder in my bag, just in case. And by the time dessert was served, that folder was open on the table, and no one could pretend anymore. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to hold a family together without anyone noticing. I grew up just outside Providence, Rhode Island, in a 2-story colonial with a sagging porch and a patchy lawn my dad tried to keep green every summer. Our house wasn't much, but it was steady. My dad, Mark, ran a small office supply business downtown. Nothing flashy, just dependable like him. My mom, Diane, had a way of moving through life like she was waiting for something better to show up. And my sister Amanda, 4 years older than me, was always the one she believed would bring that something better. Amanda was everything people wanted to look at: smart, sharp-tongued, polished. Mom took her to every ballet recital, every debate tournament, sat front row with a camcorder and lipstick on. I stayed home helping Dad box up shipments and file receipts in the back room of his shop. I liked it better, to be honest. He'd let me run the numbers on inventory sheets and tell me how money moves. Understanding money means understanding freedom, he used to say, sliding a ledger across the table between bites of toast. I never forgot that. By the time Amanda left for Columbia and a full-ride scholarship, no one was surprised. She was the showpiece of the family. I stayed in state, planned to transfer to Providence College after a year at the community college. That was the deal. But life doesn't always care about deals. My senior year of high school, Dad started getting these headaches. He brushed them off at first, just stress, he said. But then one night during Amanda's alumni banquet, he collapsed in the hotel lobby. 3 days later, we found out it was lymphoma. Stage 3. The doctor said it was aggressive, but treatable. Amanda had already packed her bags. She said turning down her scholarship wasn't an option. So I stayed. I put my acceptance letter in a drawer and enrolled part-time at the local community college. I worked mornings at a grocery store, afternoons, helping Dad get through his treatments, and nights doing laundry and making sure the bills were paid on time. Mom, she disappeared into her book clubs and yoga classes, telling everyone how hard it all was, how strong we were being. But she never came with us to the appointments. She never learned how to set up his meds or refill his oxygen. Amanda called once a week, maybe, said she missed us. Posted smiling pictures from rooftop parties, her boyfriend in designer sunglasses, her caption always something about how grateful she was for her roots. One Sunday, I overheard Mom on the phone with her. "Rachel's staying home for college," she said. "You know how she is always needing to play the martyr." That word sat in my stomach like a stone. Still, I stayed. I learned how to manage Dad's care, how to fight with insurance companies, how to stretch every grocery dollar. I started working at a small accounting firm in the evenings, getting better at spreadsheets and ledgers. I told myself it was temporary, just until Dad was better. But the weeks turned into months. The months turned into years. Amanda came home 4 times in 3 years. Each time she brought a suitcase full of new clothes, stayed just long enough to get a few tearful photos with Dad, and left early because something came up back in the city. She never saw the electricity bills piling up. She didn't know I was calling the bank asking for payment extensions. She didn't ask, and no one made her. I was 27 when I found the first transfer, $5,000 wired from Dad's account to Amanda's. He told me the city was expensive and they didn't want her working 2 jobs. I was working 3. That was the first time I wondered if I was just convenient. But I didn't say anything. Not then. Not yet. Amanda's wedding was in June. 300 guests, a ballroom venue, and a 6-tier cake flown in from somewhere fancy. I was one of 6 bridesmaids wearing a dress that had been tailored twice, then re-hemmed a 3rd time to match Amanda's new color scheme. Her college roommate was the maid of honor. At the reception, I overheard 2 women in matching heels whispering near the cocktail bar. "Which one's the sister again? The one in the plain blue dress. I think she still lives at home." They smiled politely when I walked past. Neither one said hello. I left early and walked out into the parking lot alone. No one noticed. A few weeks later, Amanda and her husband, Brian, bought a house 15 minutes from my parents'. Big place, wraparound porch, brand new siding. Looked like something from a home magazine. She started hosting Sunday dinners, inviting extended family, bringing in wine from local vineyards, and talking about her latest client wins. Dad seemed impressed by her all over again. "She's got big ideas," he told me one night, could really take the business into the next phase. He said it while I was printing inventory reports at the dining table, the same reports I'd written after implementing the new tracking system that kept us from going under last quarter. Amanda never asked about the business itself, not the real part of it, but she had opinions. Brian and I were thinking, she said during one of those dinners, what if we opened a second location? Maybe Cambridge or Burlington. Just test the waters. Dad nodded. Mom looked like she wanted to cry from pride. No one asked what I thought. That week I noticed something odd in the accounts. Small transfers, not huge, but consistent, moving out of the main business fund and into a separate account I didn't recognize. At first I thought it might be a vendor payment, but the name didn't match anything. When I looked deeper, I found the account belonged to Amanda. She had been skimming from the business. Over the next month, I kept tracking the numbers, double-checking the source. Every few days, a few $100s disappeared. I cross-referenced transaction times, IP addresses, account routing. There was no mistake. It was her. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Then Amanda sent the group text, "Thanksgiving at our house this year. Full family dinner. We have a big announcement. 3 p.m., Thursday." I read it 3 times. My stomach tightened. The night before, I gathered everything: printouts, transaction logs, screen captures. I made a folder, then made a backup. I tucked one into my bag and left the other copy in my desk drawer. Thanksgiving morning, I pulled up in front of Amanda's house. The lawn was trimmed. The porch had matching wreaths on each window, and someone had stacked miniature hay bales by the front door like it was a harvest catalog photo shoot. Amanda opened the door before I could knock. "Rachel, you made it," she said with a bright smile and air-kissed beside my cheek. Everyone's already here. The foyer had been redone since my last visit. New floors, framed art that probably cost more than my rent. I followed her into the living room. Most of the extended family was already seated: Aunt Linda and Uncle Paul Cousins from New Hampshire, a few folks I hadn't seen since Amanda's wedding. Dad looked good, stronger, healthier. He was laughing softly at something Brian said. Mom spotted me and waved me over like I was running late. "We were just talking about Amanda's big news," she said. "I thought the announcement was after dinner," I answered, keeping my tone neutral. "Oh, she's being mysterious," Mom said, smiling. "But it's something wonderful for the business." Dinner was long and polished. Table for 16 place cards in gold ink. Turkey from some farm in Vermont. Everything organic. The cranberry sauce came in tiny crystal bowls. I sat between 2 people I didn't know well, neither of whom asked me much of anything. Amanda held court from the head of the table. Brian sat beside her, nodding like a silent partner. As dessert came out, Amanda tapped her spoon to her wine glass. The room quieted. "I just want to say thank you," she began, standing with a practiced smile. "Family means so much to Brian and me, which is why we wanted to share this next step with all of you." She took Brian's hand. "After everything our family business has been through, we're thrilled to announce that we're expanding Davis Office Supplies into a regional chain. We'll be opening our first new location in Cambridge this spring and 2 more next year." There was a pause, then clapping, heads nodding. Aunt Linda said, "Oh, wow," and Uncle Paul leaned in to hear better. Amanda kept going. "Dad has agreed that it's time for the next generation to take over. So starting January, I'll be stepping in as CEO. Brian will be our new CFO." The applause got louder. Mom beamed. Dad nodded. I sat still. Then Amanda turned her eyes toward me. Her voice shifted cooler, firmer. "There's one more thing we need to address. For a business to succeed, it needs unity. It needs people who are aligned. Over the past few months, we've had concerns about certain behaviors." I felt the air change. "Rachel," she said, "you've been possessive about the business records. You've made accusations. You've been combative." So we made a decision. We took a vote. She looked around the table. Heads lowered. Plates pushed aside. "You're no longer part of the business. And until you can adjust your attitude, you're not part of the family either." The silence was sharp. Mom stared down at her plate. Dad didn't say anything. Amanda folded her hands. "You've become toxic, Rachel. Everyone agrees." I looked around the table. People I had cooked for, cleaned for, driven to the hospital. People who had watched me keep my father alive. Not one of them spoke up. That's when I reached for the folder. I placed it on the table, slid it across the linen. "Well," I said, "if I'm not part of the family anymore, then I guess you won't need this." Amanda hesitated. Then she opened the folder. Within seconds, the color drained from her face. Amanda flipped through the folder, faster at first, then slower, as she realized what she was looking at. Her fingers hesitated on the page with the account number. Brian leaned over her shoulder. "Amanda," he said quietly, "is this real?" She didn't answer. She just slammed the folder shut and pushed it away. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, trying to steady her voice. "Rachel's manipulating the data to make me look bad." I stayed seated. "The numbers are direct pulls from the company's account system," I said. "Every transaction includes the destination bank time and originating IP address. That IP belongs to your home office." For a moment, no one moved. Brian pulled the folder back toward him and began flipping through it himself. Dad reached for it next. Mom covered her mouth. Someone whispered on the far side of the table, but I couldn't make out the words. Amanda stood, one hand gripping the back of her chair. "You had no right to go through private business records." "It wasn't private," I said. "I've been managing those accounts for years." Her voice rose. "This is my family's company." "No, it was our family's company." "Until you decided it wasn't." The room filled with noise questions, overlapping voices, someone saying, "I didn't know," while Dad read in silence, page by page. "I didn't just bring one copy," I said, finally standing. "Everything in that folder is already with our accountant. A full digital backup is in place. And yes, if needed, I'll take it to the authorities." Amanda stared at me, her expression unreadable. I looked around the table at cousins who once hugged me every Christmas, at aunts and uncles who used to send birthday cards. "You voted me out of the family because you thought I was difficult," I said. "Turns out I was just the only one paying attention." Dad stood, folder still in his hand. "Rachel." "No," I said. "I've been silent long enough." I picked up my bag and turned toward the hallway. "Happy Thanksgiving." I heard someone call my name as I stepped outside. I didn't look back. I drove straight to Michael's place. He met me at the door with a mug of hot cocoa and a blanket already laid out on the couch. "How bad?" he asked. I sat down slowly. "Worse than I expected," I said. And somehow, exactly what I thought it would be. The calls started before I'd finished telling him everything, first from Dad, then Mom, then Amanda. I silenced my phone and left it on the counter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for picking up. The next morning there was a knock on Michael's door, a loud one. He looked through the peephole, sighed, and opened it slowly. My parents stood outside. Mom looked like she hadn't slept. Her mascara was smudged. Dad's shirt was buttoned wrong. They both looked smaller somehow. "Rachel," Mom said, "we need to talk." Michael stepped aside. I let them in. They sat across from me at the kitchen table. "We didn't know about the money," Mom said. "You have to believe that. I told Dad months ago," I said, "about the irregularities. Dad didn't meet my eyes. I thought it was for consulting work. Amanda made it sound reasonable. She made a lot of things sound reasonable," I said, "and no one ever checked. They didn't argue. They just sat quietly." "What happens now?" Mom asked. "You said the authorities had a copy. I haven't filed anything yet," I said, "but the file exists, and I won't be erased again." Dad nodded slowly. "Amanda admitted it to Brian. After you left. That surprised me. She did. She broke down, told him everything. They're in debt, badly. Credit cards, mortgage, even the car. They were using company money to cover lifestyle costs." No one spoke for a while. Then Dad asked, "What do you want?" It was the first time in years anyone in my family had said those words to me. "I want a formal role in the company," I said. "Chief Operating Officer, with legal protections. I want written authority, and I want public acknowledgement of what I've done." Mom looked up. "You mean a family meeting? I mean everyone who was at Thanksgiving. I want them to hear the truth, just like they heard the lie." Mom blinked back tears. Dad didn't argue. "And Amanda?" I asked. She's not in a good place," Dad said. "She needs counseling. Financial help, maybe legal advice. Brian is insisting she take responsibility." "She should," I said. "Full restitution and a public apology. No more quiet cover-ups." They both nodded. When they stood to leave, Mom paused. "Would you consider coming home?" I shook my head. "I have my own place now. I need that space." They left quietly. Michael sat down beside me. "You did better than I would have," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "I didn't expect them to listen," I said, "but they did." We didn't speak for a while after that. The quiet wasn't heavy, just steady. 3 days later, they scheduled the meeting. Everyone from Thanksgiving was there, uncles, cousins, family, friends. Amanda came in last. She looked tired. Brian stood behind her, not beside her. The company attorney opened with a document formalizing my role. COO, protected authority, legal oversight. Then Dad spoke. He described the situation, apologized for his part in letting things spiral. Amanda stood next. She didn't cry. "I betrayed this family," she said, "especially Rachel. She gave up everything for us. I stole from the business she saved. Then I tried to push her out. No one clapped. No one cheered. But no one looked away. I didn't speak during the meeting. I just listened. When it ended, I stepped outside into the cold air and let the quiet settle. Something had broken, but something else, maybe something stronger, had just begun. I stayed late at the office the night after the family meeting. Most of the lights had been shut off by 6, but I sat in the back conference room finishing up a quarterly vendor review. The numbers came easier now. Systems I'd built from scratch were running smoothly. We had just closed our strongest quarter in over 5 years, and the past due accounts were finally under control. Dad stepped in quietly around 7. He was holding 2 paper cups from the diner down the street. "Still here. Had to finish the Fleetwell audit," I said, not looking up. He placed one of the cups near me. "Hazelnut, no sugar. Figured you'd still be at it." I closed my laptop and took the cup. The lid clicked softly under my fingers. "You were right," he said after a long pause, "about the inventory model. We would have over-ordered again if we stuck with the old one." I nodded. It's a seasonal curve. We've been missing it for years. He sat down across from me. I should have listened sooner. There wasn't much more to say. The silence between us had changed since the confrontation. It wasn't avoidance now. It was something closer to recognition. We worked side by side through the winter. He deferred more decisions to me, not out of resignation, but respect. We didn't always agree, but we argued like colleagues, not parent and child. At home, things were slower to settle. Mom called more often, usually under the pretense of asking how Dad was doing or needing help with something on the printer. But once in January, she invited me to lunch at a cafe near my apartment. She arrived early, sitting near the window with her coat still on. When I walked in, she stood unsure if we were hugging or just sitting down. We settled for a nod and a smile. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, stirring her tea, "about what happened, about everything before that." I didn't interrupt. "You and Amanda, you were always so different. I used to think she was the one who wanted more, the one with drive." She paused. "But now I'm not sure I knew what I was looking at." I folded my napkin in half. "I never understood why you didn't push harder," she went on. "Now I realize you were holding everything together, not pushing but carrying." We didn't talk much after that, but she asked how work was going, and when I told her, she listened. Amanda's role in the company had ended the day of the family meeting. The repayment plan was formalized in writing with monthly installments tracked through our legal team. Brian had taken her to stay at their lake house while they worked through things. They eventually sold their main home to cover part of the debt. Amanda took a marketing job at a smaller firm outside the city. She sent the first few payments without comment. Then one day in early spring, she asked if we could meet. We sat in a quiet coffee shop halfway between our towns. She was dressed simply. "No accessories, no heels. I started volunteering at a women's shelter," she said, wrapping both hands around her cup. It was part of the community service agreement, but I asked to keep going. I nodded. There was a woman there. She told me she left everything behind for her family, said they forgot her once they didn't need her anymore. Amanda looked out the window. I didn't have anything to say back. I waited. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, "but I wanted you to know I see it now. What I did, what it cost." We parted quietly. No promises, no final words. My life moved forward. Eleanor, the managing partner at the accounting firm, offered me a formal promotion and walked me through the firm's education assistance program. "You're one of the sharpest analysts I've seen come through here," she said during our quarterly review. "You've earned this." I accepted the scholarship offer that same week and mapped out a plan to finish my degree by next spring. I worked days at the firm, evenings at the business, and weekends on coursework. My apartment stayed small, 2 rooms, modest furniture plants in the window. But it felt like mine. I hosted a small dinner there in April, not for family, but for people who had helped me during the past year. Michael brought dessert. Eleanor brought a bottle of wine. A classmate from my accounting program made her famous sweet potato salad. We sat around the table talking about careers, favorite recipes, new routines. There were no comparisons, no power plays, no old wounds hidden behind polite smiles. At one point, Michael raised a glass. "To found families," he said, and to Rachel, who taught us all how to stand firm when it mattered. The next day, Dad stopped by the office. "I was thinking about the new supplier agreements," he said. "Might be time to rework the standard terms. You've got a better read on the market than I do." We reviewed the draft side by side. He asked questions. I answered. When he left, he turned in the doorway. "This company wouldn't exist without you," he said. I should have said that sooner. The words weren't flashy, but they landed differently than they would have a year ago, because now they came from a place of seeing me clearly. It was a Thursday morning in late May when Eleanor stopped by my desk. She set a stack of files on the corner, then leaned in a little. "There's an opening in senior accounting," she said. It's internal and we'll post it next week, but I think you should apply. We're restructuring some roles and your work with the Davis transition hasn't gone unnoticed. I looked up from my spreadsheet. Would it conflict with finishing my degree? Not if we stagger the onboarding, she said. We'd make it work. She gave a small smile. You've earned a seat at the table, Rachel. I nodded. Thank you. When she walked away, I sat still for a long minute, the cursor blinking on my screen. That afternoon, I walked into the Davis office after hours. Dad had already left. I unlocked the file cabinet behind my desk and pulled out Amanda's repayment ledger. Her next installment was due in 4 days. I double-checked the math, filed it, and locked the drawer. Then I opened a new folder. This one was mine. Inside was a draft of a proposal. I'd been writing it for weeks, a plan to fully modernize our client services, roll out digital ordering, and simplify distribution through third-party carriers. It was ready. I printed 3 clean copies and placed them on Dad's desk before I left for the day. The next morning he called. Got your file, he said. You free for lunch? We met at a sandwich shop near the business park. No suits, no formality, just 2 turkey clubs and a pitcher of iced tea. I read through your plan, he said, after the server walked away. It's smart. A lot of it's what we should have done 5 years ago. I waited. I want you to lead it, he added. Call the meetings. Make the hires you need. If there's budget shortfall, we'll revisit the schedule, but I'm signing off on the framework. He reached into his folder and pulled out my cover sheet. My name was typed clearly at the top. Chief Operating Officer, he said. Let's make that official. We shook on it. That night I got home to find a small envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a note handwritten in Amanda's usual script. Rachel. Thank you for holding the line. I couldn't see it then. I think I'm starting to now. Amanda. There wasn't anything else. 2 days later, I walked into her repayment review with the attorney. She was already seated. No makeup hair pulled back. She greeted me with a quiet hi and offered a copy of her updated financial worksheet. I took a lower salary job, she said, but I've added a second part-time position to stay on track with repayment. The attorney nodded. I checked the math. She was ahead of schedule. When the meeting ended, Amanda stood, but didn't leave right away. There's something else, she said. Brian and we've separated. Still living in the same space for now, but things are different. I nodded. She glanced at the floor. It's probably for the best. There was a silence between us. Not cold, just unfinished. I have a lot of work to do, she added. So do I said. I walked out first. The rest of the summer passed quietly. I finished 2 more courses, started onboarding for my new role at the firm, and spent weekends working through the systems overhaul at Davis Office Supplies. I also began rearranging my apartment. Nothing major, just shifting what I owned into spaces that felt more like me. Michael noticed. You're settling in, he said one evening as he helped me move a bookshelf. First time I've seen you hang a photo that wasn't part of the frame when you bought it. I smiled. Takes time. He leaned against the doorway. You ever think about what's next? Sometimes. Well, he said, whenever you're ready to talk about it, I'm here. We didn't rush anything. We'd been friends a long time. The closeness came naturally, but we were careful. Both of us knew what it felt like to be responsible for other people's messes. In early September, Eleanor sent me a calendar hold for a quarterly planning retreat. Just a 1-day offsite, but it was the first time my name appeared on the facilitator list. I stared at it for a long moment before accepting. Later that week, I dropped by my parents' house to return a binder Dad had asked for. Mom was in the kitchen folding laundry. She turned when she saw me. You have a minute? I nodded. She set the towel down and pulled out a chair. I was proud of Amanda for chasing big dreams, she said. But I didn't understand what it meant that you stayed. She looked out the window. I used to think ambition meant leaving. Now I wonder if it also means staying and holding everything together while nobody's looking. I didn't say anything. She turned back toward me. I missed a lot. We sat quietly. Then she reached for the folded towel. There's soup in the freezer if you want to take any home. I thanked her. And I did. I brought the soup home in a grocery bag with soft handles, chicken and rice, 2 containers. My mom had labeled the lids in neat handwriting with the date and a little heart. I placed them in the freezer when I got back to my apartment, then sat down at the kitchen table without turning the light on. The late summer sun still filtered through the blinds. There was nothing urgent waiting. For once, the inbox could wait. That following Monday, I arrived at the Davis office just after 7. I'd gotten used to opening up before the rest of the team arrived. It was quiet then, focused. As I unlocked the side cabinet, I noticed the red file marker I had left for Amanda's next repayment check was still there. Due date was tomorrow. But this one felt different. No reminders had gone out, no messages from the attorney's office. I checked the ledger anyway. The payment had been wired that morning early just after 5. A note was attached to the transaction, installment 10 of 12. On track. A. At noon, I got a text from Amanda. Are you at the office? I'd like to stop by, just for 5 minutes. I replied yes. She arrived half an hour later. She didn't bring papers or folders. No small talk. I know we're almost done with the payment, she said. I've been thinking about what happens after. She sat down across from me. I won't ask for anything from the company. That chapter's closed. But I wanted to say, I've been working on the apology part. Not just the words, but the meaning. I let her speak. I used to think I had to be the star, she said. That there wasn't room for both of us to succeed. I made everything a competition. And then I started treating the business like a backup plan. Her voice didn't crack. She didn't cry. I took from the people who kept me afloat. From you. From Dad. I just wanted to tell you in person that I know. She stood. I don't expect anything from you. Just wanted you to hear it without a folder between us. She left before I could say much. That evening, I walked through the neighborhood near my apartment. Just a short loop around the park, but the air had cooled and the breeze carried the scent of early autumn. When I got home, I flipped on the porch light and found a brown envelope leaning against the front door. It was from Eleanor. Inside was a welcome letter. My official promotion had been finalized. Full benefits, new title, and a corner workstation with my own window. Start date Monday. Attached was a handwritten note. You saw what no one else wanted to see. You held the line. Now it's time to build what comes next. Eleanor. I set the note down beside my keys. That weekend, Michael came over with a box of tools and helped me hang the last 2 frames I'd been putting off since spring. One was a print from a local market. The other was a diploma cover, still empty but ready. You're getting closer, he said, adjusting the level on the hook. Next semester, I said. Almost there. We sat on the couch afterward, both of us quiet. The windows were open. You could hear someone mowing a few blocks over. I know we haven't talked much about us, he said, but I've been thinking about it. I looked over. I'm not in a rush, he added, but I don't plan on disappearing either. We didn't decide anything that night. We just sat a little longer, and when he left, I walked him to the door and stood on the porch while he drove away. The next morning, I opened my laptop and finalized my last paper for the semester. I submitted it just before the deadline. The confirmation page blinked on the screen. Done. The week after Dad and I sat in the Davis office reviewing supplier contracts. He passed me a folder of numbers and I flagged 3 discrepancies within the first few minutes. You're sharp, he said. Sharper than I ever was. He paused. I should have said this a long time ago, but I didn't think you needed to hear it. I looked up. This place, it wouldn't still exist if it weren't for you. And not just the numbers. You kept the lights on when we were too proud to admit we were in the dark. He folded the folder closed. "I know I can't undo everything, but I'm proud of you, Rachel." I nodded. "Thank you." The moment passed without ceremony. He went back to flipping through receipts. I returned to the vendor sheet, but it had landed just the same. The official letter confirming my promotion arrived the first week of November. I opened it at my kitchen table, same spot where I used to balance my dad's pill organizer. This time I was holding a benefits packet and a signed offer from the firm's executive team. My start date as junior accountant would begin in January once my degree was officially posted. I placed the letter beside my laptop, took a slow breath, and closed the folder labeled Pending. Later that evening, I got a call from my mom. "We're thinking of having a small Thanksgiving this year," she said. "Just immediate family. Quiet." I said that sounded fine. After we hung up, I sat back in my chair. It had been nearly a year since Amanda's announcement, the one that ended with me being voted out of the family. Since then, everything had shifted. Not fast, not neatly, but steadily. Amanda made her final repayment that same week, the full amount plus interest as agreed. She mailed it with a short note, paid in full. Amanda's dad reviewed the receipt and handed it to me without saying much. He didn't need to. A few days later, Amanda called. "Would you be willing to meet?" she asked. "Nothing formal, just coffee. My treat." We met at a small cafe near the old Wellesley Library. She was already there sipping something with cinnamon on top. "I'm leaving the shelter job at the end of the month," she said. "They offered me a position at the community center full-time. I think I'm going to take it." I nodded. "It's quieter work," she added, "but I think that's what I need right now." She paused. "I'm still in counseling. Brian and we're figuring out what that looks like now." She looked out the window, then back at me. "I'm not asking to come back into the business. I know that chapter's closed. But if you're open to it, I'd like to start rebuilding something." Slowly, I let her speak. Then I said, "I'm not in a place to forget what happened, but I'm willing to move forward." Carefully. She nodded. "That's fair." We finished our coffee. When we stood to leave, we hugged not out of habit, but choice. Back at the firm, things were shifting too. Eleanor introduced me to our newest client during a Monday morning briefing. "She's one of ours now," she told the team. Smart, steady, and tested under fire. The respect in the room wasn't loud, but it was clear. That Friday, I stopped by the Davis office to drop off a few archived records. Dad met me in the front hallway. "You've been keeping your distance," he said gently. "I understand why. But just so you know, Thanksgiving dinner, we'd like you there. No announcements, no surprises, just family. Real family this time." I said I'd think about it. That weekend, I sat down with Michael at my apartment. We cooked together something simple, just roasted vegetables and chicken in the oven. After we ate, he asked, "What are you going to do about Thanksgiving?" "I haven't decided," I said. "But I'm leaning toward hosting one of my own." He looked up from his mug. "Just your people." "Yeah, people who saw me through." He nodded. "I'll bring pie." So I sent out a few messages. Eleanor, some classmates, a coworker from the firm who always stayed late to close the books with me. Thanksgiving Day came quietly. My apartment was warm and smelled like cinnamon and thyme. Michael showed up early to help in the kitchen. We lit a few candles, pulled the folding chairs from the closet. By the time everyone arrived, the table was full, not of anything extravagant, just good food and easy laughter. After we ate, Eleanor raised her glass. To Rachel, she said, "For reminding all of us that holding the line is sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do." I didn't speak right away. Then I said, "To chosen family." We clinked glasses, and I looked around at the people who had seen me clearly when others had looked away. After everyone left, I stood in the doorway for a moment looking out over the quiet street. The dishes were still in the sink. The candles had burned low, and the smell of roasted squash still lingered in the air. I closed the door gently and turned off the porch light. The apartment was warm, but not just from the heat. It felt lived in, safe. I walked over to the table and started clearing plates, stacking them slowly one by one. No rush, no pressure, just the steady rhythm of an evening winding down. In the corner, the folded napkins Amanda had mailed a week before, simple linen pale blue, sat in a small basket near the window. She hadn't come that night. I hadn't asked her to, but the note tucked inside the package had said, "For your table, however you said it now." Amanda. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. Later, I curled up on the couch with a blanket legs tucked beneath me, cup of tea in hand. Michael had left the last slice of pie in the fridge with a note that just said, "You earned this one." He always knew when to say, "Just enough." The soft hum of the heater kicked on, a steady, familiar sound. I sat in the quiet for a while, letting the peace of the evening settle in. It's funny how something can look like an ending for so long, and then one day you realize it was just the middle. There was a time I thought being the one who stayed meant being invisible, that being responsible meant being overlooked. But slowly, piece by piece, I'd learned how to make room for myself, not by demanding it, but by building it, quietly, steadily, day by day. The business was strong. My degree was nearly done. My role at the firm was secure. My apartment was small, but full of life. And the people who showed up for me really showed up. They weren't just guests anymore. They were the family I'd chosen. Dad had started to see me differently, not as the daughter who filled a space, but as someone who built something from nothing. Mom still reached out in small ways, folded leftovers, short check-ins, quiet apologies she didn't always know how to say out loud. And Amanda, well, she was learning, in her own time on her own terms. The ache of those earlier years, the silence, the dismissal, the betrayal, they hadn't vanished. But they weren't in control anymore. What I know now is this dignity isn't something other people hand you. It's something you claim by standing up even when your voice shakes, even when no one claps, even when they turn away first. And real justice. It doesn't always come in grand gestures or public victories. Sometimes it comes in the quiet moments, the ones where you no longer need permission to be whole. So if you've ever found yourself holding everything together while no one noticed, if you've ever been pushed aside only to rise stronger than before, know this: you are not alone, and you are not invisible. Thank you for listening to my story. If it reminded you of something in your own life, I'd love to hear it in the comments. And if you know someone who's learning to stand up for themselves, gently share this with them. Sometimes the quietest strength is the one that lasts the longest. Take care of yourself and take up your space. You deserve to be here.